that's a big one. So we're going to start seeing investments in cold chains, and hopefully we'll see also Botswana Railway sort of come into the party, because I mean there's a limit to what the road can move, and of course consider issues of congestion and things like that. But we'll see a lot of development into cold chains, which we have had these discussions before, but we were slow in that, because I mean most of the cold stuff or cold chains were needed for, you remember the case of Botswana medical stores. So when we started moving medicines around, that's when we started paying attention to that part of logistics. Yeah.
$500 million worth of a project.
Yeah.
And some people may be asking themselves, is it a good investment? And why particularly this product of citrus?
Yeah, so let's paint the context, excuse me. So we'll focus specifically on the export market of citrus. Right now it sits somewhere at $16 billion, just export market. So that means it excludes internal consumption and stuff like that. Who are the leaders in this market? Spain, somewhere towards $4 billion. Followed by South Africa, our neighbor. And they're huge on that. And South Africa leads the world in exportation of grapefruit, for example. So $500 million pullers really, if we put it in context, is really negligible if you think about it. Because it will be somewhere around, if we were to convert it to dollars, really very
negligible,
very
negligible in terms of the industry.
Yeah. So, but if you look at huge importers like US, probably around $1.65 billion of citrus, and around that, you can place ourselves there and say, but how much can we contribute there? So we are really at the infancy stage, if I use that. But there's more that we need to do. I can attest to you that's really negligible in terms of the context we are dealing with. It's really huge. More so that if you look at the strategy now, it's really export driven. Even this project is very deliberate. 70% will be taken out and 30% for local consumption. So, but it tells you how big an opportunity exists there. So we would like to see more of that development. That's why the question was, can we really replicate this? Yeah.
Now, perhaps speaking to, the fact that, this is just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg is what you just mentioned. What other opportunities then exist within the value chain? Perhaps let's unpack the value chain, highlighting, where areas of improvement as well as innovation is necessary within the country for us to be able to fully explore this value chain.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think we should also recognize the current efforts around that. Maybe for a view at home, what really is a value chain?
Absolutely.
So I think that it needs to be unpacked a little bit. So we look at the value chain. If you look at the traditional value chain, it's really activities that support the production of a given product. And in this case, remember, we can look at the value chain just until the first harvest. So it's an orange, and then we export it. We can look at the value chain also in terms of taking it further, processing it, and stuff like that. But if you look, if we turn back to this project specifically, you realize that there's aspects of seedlings like seeding, and where do we get those? Of course, some of them would have to come from South Africa. Limpopo is big on that. But we have also a project that's happening in Toronto. I don't know if you're aware of that. So we have a seedling multiplication plant actually there. That's among other things is focusing on this citrus products. And we'll see other offshoots like R&D. Research and development is going to be really big. Earlier in the interview, one of the employees who was like the first in that Selebi-Phikwe citrus project talked about how technical just production of this is. And yesterday I had a sort of a conversation with one of the experienced farmers in this field, and he told me how they can manipulate the tree in terms of to influence its productivity, and even the pageant in the tree. So it's a very complex system so it's not just like planting a tree and then we water it and stuff. So we have people who are responsible for seedling development. And of course, then from there, you have to move them, so that transport comes in. And it tells you also we need human resource that's qualified for. That's one of the biggest challenges, actually. Currently, the authorities are looking at the Plant Protection Act. And one of the things that I learned from that is we actually have, if many, we have about 2 experts who are really in the country, 2 experts who are equipped to really contribute to that. Because one of the things that we'll talk about is how to guard this industry, because I mean it's a very fragile one, actually, if you think about it. But for now, the focus is really on the value chain. So we move the plant to the farm, and of course, the operations is really what is happening in Selebi-Phikwe right now. So the guys who plant it, and that could be more farmers. And I think one of the things that we should mention, especially in the country, some of the records show that we have just above 160 farmers who are involved in the citrus production. But 94% of those operate very small holdings with just 5 hectares or less. Can you imagine? So that means that, like, a very small number actually operates in that. But yeah, these are the guys who are responsible for the production side. And then, of course, the harvest will be ready, and then we take it further. But around this, there will be indirect opportunities that occur. And I think if we take Spain, for example, because they are the largest exporter, there are many lessons that we can learn in terms of how the value chain is designed. Among those is how the product is marketed. But of course, for them, they were lucky they managed to attract interests of venture capitalists and stuff like that. And of course, that meant that market was structured. But what we will see eventually is that there's going to be a contraction of players in that. So maybe we'll start with a growth because people are interested. They see that there's an opportunity. But eventually, the market will sort of kick some of them out because, we're going to go for efficiency and others. And then eventually, some of them will not be able to compete. So once the product is ready, like today is ready, so we can start thinking value chain extends further. So now is transporting this product to different markets, or we turn it within the country, we start processing it.
Rempela, as we speak, I think just zoning in on what is currently happening on the ground in Selebi-Phikwe, they were witnessing His Excellency the President alongside a delegation of, I'd like to believe all the relevant stakeholders who've had an input in getting the project to where it is, actually now going towards what will be the hand-picking of certain fruits from this 1,500 hectares of land. And yeah, this is really what we'll be seeing happening right now, hopefully in the next couple of minutes. Very exciting moment, it certainly is. And, of course, something that we had been mentioned earlier is today in particular, we're going to see the harvest of lemons. That is where really, the harvest will begin. And then over a period of time, around June, July, we'll then see, more fruits, being harvested. But yeah, this is
going to be an interesting one. I wonder whether the President has ever harvested anything in his life from any farm. So it's going to be interesting to find out how he does this one here. But Rempela, there was something that I wanted to pick up on. Yeah. That you mentioned before we went to talking to the pictures of what's happening in Selebi-Phikwe. You said that we need to guard this industry. What exactly do you mean by we need to guard this industry? Because we are looking at issues of AFCFTA, etc., etc. Yeah. How do we guard it, and what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, a couple of things, but I think at the top of the list is what you call phytosanitary measures, because and many people in the country will attest to this, especially the southern part of this country. Like in areas around Gaborone, Blockade, Pakalani, and others, people are being pestered by fruit flies as we speak right now. So, if you're planting mangoes, peaches, many people have not harvested a few times, unless if you are deliberate in spraying and stuff like that. But how did that happen? The theory is that some few years ago, we imported some of these plants from Zambia, and that's how that fruit fly came in. So when I say we should jealously guard it, it's because I mean, the brief that maybe you already got is the country had to make a case even for this harvest to go to these markets. So, because I mean, they won't allow you to just come in. So we have to satisfy certain requirements. But as long as you can cordon it, I mean, for example, if you take Australia is a very peculiar place because it's cordoned from everyone else, so they can easily control their borders. But we are a landlocked country. We share borders with many countries. And that means that to a certain extent, as much as we try to control border movements and especially infiltration of foreign products, somehow some will find themselves through the borders. And some of them is not like foreigners, it's just our citizens who are not maybe fully informed what it means. You know, so we have to start thinking on how we educate an ordinary Motswana. That if you smuggle an orange from South Africa or somewhere, what it means for this broader picture. You know, we're trying to build an industry here, you know. Look, okay, it's not that much as we said, but 500 million pullers have already gone in this thing. Imagine if it was just wiped overnight because somebody brought just one bag of oranges into the country without being monitored.
It may not be a big amount internationally when we look at other projects, but it is big for our country.
Yeah, because I mean, this is where we're going to draw a lot of confidence from. You know, so because if you look at enterprising, some people have to wait to see whether it will work or not, and then before they decide to invest the resources and stuff like that. You know.
Now, if there's something I'm also wondering, while we're still talking about guarding this industry, let's talk about sustainability. How do we then ensure that this is a sustainable industry? This is an industry that will exist for decades and decades, from generation to generation. How do we ensure that, you know, in the future we're known as a citrus producing country, the same way we're known for the diamond, the same way we're known as a beef producing country? So what is it that has to be in place for us to ensure sustainability into, you know, the next generation and following generations?
Yeah, I mean, if we take the beef industry, for example, and I think it's a good one, the reason why we have sort of stood the test of time in that, and of course there's a lot of improvement we can make, but the reality is that beef production became part of our culture. So every Motswana could keep a cow, you know, tend a cow. So if you read what makes Spain special in terms of export is that citrus production has been part of the culture since the 17th century. So you can imagine how far they come with that. So it means, like I was saying, we're at the infant stage. So we are trying to build a culture around this. So eventually it means an ordinary Motswana would know how to take care of a citrus product, how to take care of an orange plant, you know, and tend it carefully until it produces. So making it sustainable, I mean, it takes a lot, but that's the first part. Number two, making it attractive to the young people, you know. So if I mean, this project I can assure you is like I said, it's a vote of confidence on the product, on the industry, and then we're going to see development around that. But yeah,
well, I was just saying, we're seeing the president there already at his first tree. And already picking some fruits there. I don't know whether we can get any audio from that side. It would be nice to hear what he is saying. But sorry, Rampela, you can continue.
Yeah. No, thank you. So making it sustainable. I was going to go on the second point, but I think it's worth saying this: is building a working ecosystem around it. Any industry. Right. So if you build a working ecosystem, then that is what will nurture the industry to be what it is. So how does South Africa become one of the largest exporters? If you look at the history, it's very interesting because especially if we take it from the funding side of it. Because look, this is where I was saying this is a very special project because very few of us will have an opportunity to find land ready for such, with a good supply of water from the Shasha Dam, and very few of us will have that opportunity. So given that we have longer gestation periods, that means that we have to start thinking, so how do we fund this project? So how does I as an ordinary Mazwana get access to 500 million bucks? Where is that coming from? But South Africa has a good case to look at, because earlier in their founding the country, they developed agricultural banking and stuff like that. So this is why they've been successful, because they have banks and their funding structures that can listen to a farmer, that understands the farm, that understands the risks, and is structured specifically for that. So I think we have to think about that. So if we take NDB, for example, who are now housing the Molototlo fund, we have to think on how we have to restructure those agreements with farmers. Right now, I can tell you, they're not going to help us that much, So because I think if you take the Molototlo, for example, you have to start paying after 12 months or something like that. It's a good start, honestly. It's a good start, because you hardly have such a facility in the country, But it has to go beyond that and factor in the gestation period of a project. And of course, there are other short-term issues that we can deal with. But on the side of the farmer, there's still also a lot because historically we are not strong in that, So when we have a farmer, when we have a farm like the project in Selebi-Phikwe, we have to ensure that farmers who are interested in the same, and as much as possible, can find platforms of linking to.
Yeah,
I see you are watching.
I'm watching what's on the screen right now, because it's very interesting. I can see that bag is getting a bit full.
Yeah.
But let's, looking at this project.
Yeah.
What do you think? It's a big thing. It's something that in the agricultural sector, we haven't had a similar thing happen in a long time, if ever.
Yeah.
But when we look at the project, and the fact that we are very much pushing for an export-led economy.
Yeah.
What is it about this particular project, and how Botswana should view it or think about it, or deal with it?
Yeah.
To ensure that not only is it successful, but also it carries other people from behind.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we should admit is that when change happens, some people definitely resist it, But when eventually, especially when it's good change, when some people are still doubting it, I can assure you, they're still doubting
the success of this project.
Yeah, the success that we've had so far, But I think the most important message in this is that it's a start. Mm-hmm. It's a start, and I would take it as an experiment, because this is the first time we are dealing with a project of this magnitude, especially focusing on these products. So the question is, how do we build from this? How do we build from this experiment and make sure that it lives beyond just this? So, like I was saying, this could be viewed, for example. In my early career, I had opportunities to work, for example, especially in that region where we were looking at how farms can be clustered, and I think this we can take, for example, as an anchor farm, where deliberately and through the help of policy and government, see how smaller farmers, smallholder farmers that we were talking about, who constitute 94% of this population, can actually link into this project. So whether making this as a collection center for all of them, and this being the phase of negotiations in terms of contracts with external markets and stuff like that, I think they would know better in terms of how to structure that. But of course, as you can see, it will be a negotiated kind of environment. But I think the other important lesson is that, number one, it's really possible. It's really possible. And with the magnitude of the success, we're going to see a situation where people are retiring into farming, but we see young people who go to school deliberately because they want to shape their knowledge, their skills towards this type of projects.
You're talking about mindset change, basically.
Yeah.
Now, if there's something that, especially now that you're talking about seeing perhaps other farmers plugging into this as sort of the anchor farm, I actually wanted us to touch on scalability within the country. You know, what investments now need to be in place to ensure that, this isn't just a Selebi-Phikwe citrus farm project, but other farmers who are into citrus farming across the country can also benefit. So what then has to be in place to ensure that this is scalable within the country, and we're seeing other players from across the country, being able to be part of this?
Yeah, I think at the top of it really is to ensure that the market for it exists, and I think government has already done that. And I think with the efforts that they put, especially in this project, and the success that it has had now is really evidence that it can be done. But scalability requires a number of things. And of course, one of them we've already touched on is really the structure of financing, because capital investments is, if you remember the days of FAP, and the Pandamadenga farms is a very nice case for it. They had to find a special FAP because they knew that at the Pandamadenga farms it was just a forest, and they have to start by destamping, what they call destamping, so clearing the farm and stuff, which FAP was not meant for, So the amount of land that's needed also is a very big issue. So that means that now we have to start thinking from a strategic perspective, can we identify land pockets that can fit this type of products or this industry, and then find ways of, let's take the citrus project in Phikwe right now. You have land that belongs to a cooperative, and I'm coming to the issue of mindset change, because what we've seen is that over the last couple of years, cooperatives have not been doing well in the country, and we try to revive them. I mean, there's a strategy on cooperative.
Yeah, they basically collapsed.
They collapsed, But here, these guys still had assets, and many of them still do. I mean, if you go to Soria, for example, they still have land as assets that belong to cooperatives. Yeah, but I think what we see is, one of the things that we are dealing with now is inclusion policies that include economic empowerment of citizens, but also women and children, not children, but women and the disabled and others, or people living with disabilities. So cooperatives offer us that model, and I like it, and I still really think we can win there. So because cooperatives allow each one of us with the little that we have to contribute to the larger picture. But what it will do also is it will give us an opportunity to indigenize wealth. So we are creating economy for the local people, not just through employment, not through wages, but we indigenize the wealth aspect of it. Yeah, so the finance part can be approached in many ways. So we can structure it from institutions, but also we can also come to communities where we demonstrate that there's actually an opportunity for empowerment. Yeah, but this project has shown first that a market can be created, or we can create policies and we can work around complying to offer or to meet certain markets.
Rampela, from what I'm seeing, Gifiloe is in conversation with the president right now, is just perhaps speaking to what just happened. So let's listen in.
Namuni, di surla muni, hot. Mo ile gore go lemile ka bomo gore go tswe maduo mo go se ikeletsweng.
Re bona gone ha ne ka re ke toro jaaka ke tlhalosa gore le go ile mo ga ile mo ga ile mo se re motlho mme go mpeno toro o ra e bona tautona sa tswa go kgetla tsone dinamone tsa ntlha go kgetla mo tona ga go ba papa di le madirelo o tlhalositse gore eno go bona ile kgwebo tona ga go wa tsa temothuo o rile a re go mo ke dijo ga ke sore tautona eno go tlhalosa jang
ke gotle mo phuta gotle ke madi ke mebereko ke tsone dijo ke nontsho go no tsamele ya batho le go tuma ga Botswana gore tsotlhe tsene gore di molemo di monate ibile ha dia dirwa go kgotlhelesetswe tikologo di ro Botswana
go re di harologanye ha re lebella ka kgwebo re lebile bokete jo bo kae re lebile gore go a go dira pharologano e kana ka mo toropong e tautona jaaka o no tlhalosa mabane ko Phisha BW gore just about 5 years ago no ya mo stadium Monsele o ntsha dikgantse di botlhoko tsa gore moepa wa tswalo erra
nya tshimo ena ke ntlhangwe ya go araba nya mabele moagi ha go kgatlo yalo ha go hulwe tsa skere o khaole ne ke bona o rua se le there it's okay ha ke me ke makanyetsa ya no tshimo ena se se tona ke gore re itse gore mo ngwageng di le dintsi ha ke bolelwa about 18 years ne ntsela gore go sa itse gore go ka tweng ha ile go ne go lengwa tsele gore ke tsa komelelo mme tone se dirisege batho ba ile gore ba kgona go gopola ba lebela ko pele ka tsa dikgwebo ba nna le mogopolo mme ba se ka ba ira bohatla ba se ka ba e reka ba se ka ba e tsa ba e gapa ba se ka ba re gore menta e tsemo bathung ka gore ke ya batho ba madinare ba koporasi ya bone ba buisana le bone ba tsena mo tumalanong e boitshepo ena dipoelo ke so bona koporasi ya madinare ile koporasi e humile go dirisa tsotlhe mo Botswana mme ba ta gore e tlhokomelwe e laolwe sentle ba tsena mo tumalanong gore kopa gore re se go ha re go hirise ba buisana le puso bogolana le phatala metsi re kopa metsi a mantsi re batla go dira temo e tona ya nosetso e seng hela ya tse di tlwaetsweng ya ditlhare tse e leng gore di ntsha maungo a e leng gore ka tlhotlhomiso tsa bone ba lemogile gore mo ngwageng tse pedi ngwaga nngwe le mongwe dimela maungo a tswa mo tshimonyana e tla be le one a laolang ditlhwatlhwa tsa maungo a mohuta o le hatse ka bophara ao ke mo ka ganang tlebebe hela e go wena ya madi a mahatsha a sele madi a tileng ha re rekise ka madi a masesane ke madi a tileng a tshepagalang gape re rekisitse batho ba e leng gore ha ise ke tsamaye re rekisitse dilo tsa go nna yana Botswana ha ise ka tsamaye a itsege ka go ntsha dimela tsa go nna jana re tsena re le bašwa wa utlwe re le phepa re tlhatsoge go le go ntle ka bone botala bo bontse yana matute a teng ke a reng ha le kgarebela ano ana e be le tala ka bontle o ise ke mo bone le le gau nya la lebega yaanong ha le bapatswa go bolelwa batho gore matute a tswa kae ko hatsing le ntseng jang madi a lone ha ba bona a dira mo lehatsing leo ha re ke ditlhobolo ha bolae batho madi a bonwang a dirisediwa makgetho a gang ditsela a reka melemo hela ka go dira ke temeng tsa rona
ha re lebella mo letlhakoreng la dijo jaanong tautona re tla ja dinamone tse mme go tlhalosiwa gore di tla re lekana be di hetela ko mahatseng a sele
go a go rekisetswa mo lehatsheng la Botswana 30% a ile gore le one 30% ha o lebile gore go tla tswa bokae mo 70,000 tons re hitile gore be re tlhore ja dinamune hela go tla go ja dinamune hela go a go tswa dingwe tsa tsone be di ro dio tse ileng gore ke tse dina le madi a mantsi juice le go concentrate go go a go di jam wa utlwa go a go irwa di lo tse di harologaneng tse di flavorang wa utlwa go a go irwa tse ileng gore e kana di dried fruits di-stickinyana wa tlo dinyana makgarebe ha ja sentla tlhwaetse a se batle gore a tlale leswe mo dinaleng tse teletse ha jena monne e le gore ba tlatsa matute gongwe le gongwe ba rothegela mo kgabong ya bone go jwa mo go meleditsweng segwapanyana sa namune sa tura re se rekisa mo Botswana le ko Mahatsing a sele gape ba e leng gore ba batla gore ba itshome mo ditirong ba tla go reka gone mona ba go ira ya gane re bona ko PWW ba bane ba dira ba ira tsone dio tsena
gongwe ga re lebelela tautona your research agenda re ne ra lebelela jalo e simolola gore bona wa atlega mo go letagatseng kgang yone ya COVID-19 no e tlhomile ko pele di harologane tautona mme gompieno gana re bona le gore re tsena mo mohameng ono a dijo ono a bua le ga re sa buika research agenda and export led economy go hana re dirang
mmawe ha di harologane di a thoteng tshimo ena e harologane le tshimo tse dingwe le ko Mahatsing a mangwe e simolotswe hela COVID is na gore mo go rona ya wa ya nama tshimo yana ke ha e simolola mme ka melawa le tsamaiso ene re dirile ya gore batho ba kgona go bereka tsa masimo tshimo ene ya gola ya tota ka ene na kwa COVID ka goreng ka one re babaletse batho ba bereki ba ne ba le hano beng ba go hano ne ba sireleditswe kgathono le COVID ke so tshimo ene a kgona gore e emelele yaanong se maikelo a research agenda ne so le gore ne re ntse re sa ire jana yaanong ka re tlhasetswe a re ngotlhe re tle go ira tse e leng gore di harologana le tse ne re di dira tshimwe ga gona e tshwana le yone ne go tlwaelesegile gore maungo a go nna a tswa ko Aforika Borwa ko Mahatsing a mangwe gompieno ra go ntsha phega go sutswa gore namune tsa go nna yana maungo a go nana a tswa mo hatsing la Botswana e le gore ke mo go itsege mo go tumilweng a go Mahatsing a sele yaanong re tle re kgona go bona madi le go itsege gore ga o batla tseo o di bona mo Botswana
batho ba kgalo ena tautona ba tlhalosa go hana le moepo o mošwa o leng teng mme jaaka ke tlhalosa ke batla re wele ka value chain gore nako a rena le moepo a BCL ga re a ka ranya go le gontsi mo value chaining yone ya moepo mo nakong ya gompieno gongwe ke sone sebaka sa gore re bue le Batswana gore ha e tlebe le go lema go na le o dirang eng le o dirang eng and what opportunities are there for Batswana ka go harologana ka bone dikitso tse di potlana kana tse dinnye tse ba ka di tsenyang go itirela ditiro kana go itirela madi from here
kan research agenda e re metse mo goreng ra amogele gore ga go botlhale gore re tswele re dira se ne re se dira ka mokgone re se dira ka one mokgone re dio ka one a ke meepo a ke tsa temo a ke tsa nama ne ile gore tsa dio di le bogonoko ha ke re bogonoko ke ra di sa tsepe di apotso le tlalo ha ile gore ke tse di le tlalo kana ke tse di ntse yalo bidi ya gore tswa di ntse jalo ba ba go pele ke bone ba di betla ba dirisa technology maranyane ba irisa botsipa le tlhaloganyo ba kantse ba irisa madi capital ba irisa mekgwa di process tse le gore di ira gore dio tseo di hetoge le ka tlhotlhotota e be di a nama di rekwa le ke batho ba ile gore ha ba jetse di bogonoko kana ba dirise se di bogonoko mme madi le tlhotlhwa tsone a ba gore rare gompieno sengwe le sengwe se re ka se kgonang re se ka tlhola re se rekisa se le bogonoko re se hetole ka mokgwa mong ya ka re ka kgona yaanong ka gore tshimo ile simola e be ya nama e re mo go ntsi yana 30% e lekane Batswana gore ba tse dinamune tsena ba di hetole ha ba sena madi a be go tšhema ko ntle ga dibanka go na dibanka tse di tlwaelesegileng tse re itseng tse di batla merokotso e go godimo e be go na le banka tse e leng gore re netse madi gore di hokotse merokotso Batswana ba dirisa re batla gore ba irise le banka eo re batla gore le ba ile gore ha bana madi ba ile gore ha re go ba charge morokotso ba ye go tsaya madi a tšhema bontlhabong ba madi a mananeo ana ke mpho tsa tanki mme a re gore go ye go ketwa ka yone ra gore pele ga motho a tla go tsaya madi ao a ba ipakantse a ikatisitse kana a katisitswe gore a ne dipoelo a hire bana ba bangwe
re wele ka tautona kere isn't this the best time to use your famous tagline ya ke a le tsamaela segolo bogolo re lebile gore bangwe ba ba beeletsi ba gone ha ke ba ba tswang ko mahatsheng a sele dingwe tsa ditiro tse e leng gore ha o tsamaile wa di dira
ma go ba tsamaela ke mo go itsweng e bile go mpeko go amogela ke mongwe le mongwe e bile ba rata ga nka nna beke tse pedi mo gae ba nkomanya tsamaya gore tsamaele le mapalamento otlhe a nkomanya se se kgatlang ba tswa pelo ba re ke tsamaye le bone ke ba rute go tsamaya ba sa itseng go tsamaela batho ke bola gore a go ye go ketwa kwa go a berekwa mme se se monate go simola go patwa ke gore tiro tsa me maduo a me a ba tsamaela le one a bona na montse di tsamaela batswana tswa ha go tsamaela ke leno siana ke tsamaetse tsone ke tsamaetse bone go tsamaya tsone go tsamaela bone go setse gore motswana a di sale morago a di ise ko a di hetotse a itsamaele ya ke tlana ke harolla yana ha ke tswa ke tsamaya ka se ke tsamaya ka se ke tsamaya ka se ke santse ke ha go tsamaya
ke lebogile thata Tautone
kana ne ke ra ile ke no go ke ka tsamaya le ene wena ba itaba ke mokgabo ya la go tsana wa yo khaisa ta pole re ditaba ono ga bere a go ta khona now tale thank you very much
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
it's a good product
So, some are not tractor.
ke ta tsama ke trekere ke a khwetsa
a konto monene re dirisa mmela bolele ba it's
khara
o phusha
Of course, yeah, this is, we just heard the president right there, really just speaking to what we just witnessed this morning, the first harvest, or His Excellency the President's harvest from the Selebi-Phikwe citrus farm, really just speaking to how big an opportunity even just harvesting is, as far as, it being an employment creation opportunity. But what will happen, perhaps just to give you a little bit of insight from here, we're going to see the President now driving a tractor with this first harvest that we just saw, and taking it to the pack house. And, once they get to the pack house, we're going to see the unveiling of the pack house now, as or it being commissioned as the place, or rather the first production place with pack house machinery for this particular project. So we're going to be looking forward to seeing that coming up this morning. But yeah, your thoughts. We just saw the President Lee just speaking to the opportunities that exist around this project.
Yeah, I think he rightly captured some of the things that we said earlier. So I think the message that he was giving there was what this project may mean for the local people, and I think specifically after the closure of the BCL mine and things like that. But I think the emphasis that we were giving earlier on regarding the relationship between the cooperative society and the private business people, I think will remain a good case for the future, honestly. Because it's a rare one, honestly. So I think what he emphasized were the agreement was deliberately structured in such a way that the local community, the cooperative society, remains with some interest, and I heard that one of the provisions, or one of the issues raised or put in that agreement, was that they will reserve the first right to buy the produce, which is an interesting model, honestly. So that means then the cooperative society can start thinking, with the interest that we have in this business. Of course, they are receiving monthly rentals and stuff like that. Maybe we can raise funds, even from commercial banks, because I think one of the things that we should raise is that now, because if you look at the value chain, so the downstream of it now is almost guaranteed. If I'm guaranteed supply of products, or in this case maybe oranges and stuff, then I can go to the financiers and say, look, I have a contract with this credible supplier. I'll be receiving this much of oranges per season, and I want to establish maybe a juice making plant. If you I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but I think maybe people in the region, especially Phikwe, would attest to this. There's NAPRO. There's actually a whole plant that was meant for horticulture products in Phikwe. It's still sitting there, but one of the things that we show is they have plants that will produce tomato sauce and other products, but they couldn't because they always decried the supply of produce. Like I said, we have once before had I don't know if it's just called Oros. Oros is the brand, but yeah, we once had a plant in Phikwe that was produced in the days of FAP.
It is some concentrated drink of some sort.
So yeah. But of course, it meant we didn't take care of the supply side of it. Now we have the supply side of it. We have the oranges. We have the trees that are sitting. So that means we're going to see Phikwe sort of reshaping, honestly. So we see a few industries. And it is good because it's also sort of, because we can talk about, what do you call them? Special economic zones. So Phikwe itself is also a special economic zone. So we're going to see, because it attracts certain tax. And of course, maybe that will also drive some bit of FDI also on the processing side of thing. So we'll see how, it'll be interesting to see how it develops.
Right, we're speaking to Retuso Mpela and basically getting an understanding of what is happening in Selebi-Phikwe. Momentous day where the harvest of this huge farm, some 880 hectares, we understand, that has been planted with citrus trees, and they are going to be exported. 70% of that produce, of that harvest, is going to be shipped to EU markets. The USA, China, Philippines, and South Korea are some of the names that have been mentioned. Africa, of course, is in there, as well as, of course, locally, 500 million pillars worth of a project there. We understand there's going to be some 220 seasonal workers or permanent workers, and 200, one of the two, the two figures, I'm confusing them at the moment, but 220 could be permanent, 200 could be seasonal workers.
Yeah.
Rempela, I want to take you back to one of the issues that you touched on earlier, that my colleague was asking you about with regard, and you mentioned the issue of Panamatinga farms.
Yeah.
And one thing also that I need to just touch on is the fact that this farm was started at a very trying time during the COVID period.
Yes.
But when we go back to the issue of the Panamatinga farms, is it possible for the government to strategically say, we are going to start looking at farms and encouraging all the way those farms that are huge, to ensure that we actually meet the export-led economy that we want to be at?
Yeah. Like I said, it's really depends on the will. So it's like if we want to be an export-led economy. Yeah. So now we are starting to see deliberate steps in that direction.
Right.
And this is what we have been lacking, to tell you the truth, for some time. We have always wanted to do it, but never really put it into action. We had the policies for it, but it never came to fruition. But what we are asking also needs some bit of caution, because, like I said, this project is special because of the attention it was given. I mean, one of the things that the president mentioned earlier was the project being or government facilitating supply of water, which doesn't necessarily happen for every other farmer. So now it means now with this, and that's why I would say, let's take this as an experiment. We have seen what a concerted effort can achieve, and we have notes. We facilitated 1, we facilitated 2, we facilitated 3. So, like I said when we started, can we replicate this? And I would say yes, it's possible. Because we have proved it works, we have listen to this. We have gained confidence of many stakeholders. For starters, the farmers, and potential farmers, and of course the market has given a tick now. They say we can receive your product. This is tickling the ears of the financiers now, because they're looking for opportunities. They're like, oh, it's possible, so maybe we can play around that. Recently, we saw a move to relocate some of the funds in our pensions from international markets into the local markets. They're also watching, can we push some of the funds in that direction? So there's a huge opportunity in that regard. And yes, I mean, with the support of, like I said earlier, if we have good research and development, Tonata is dealing with seedlings. You know, we're multiplying them. We can test these products. Can they work in these conditions and in those conditions? What should we improve in? And then eventually, I think we can have a sort of ideal places where they can be identified. What I was trying to run away from in that question is where we would feel that maybe it would be the benefit of the few. You know, so it's like, let's work on the structure that would allow multiple beneficiaries. And now I think one of the things that they are working on now is strengthening associations, farming associations, and yeah, I think, yeah.
Perhaps before we continue, as we speak, or seeing His Excellency the President now driving a tractor which has the produce that was just hand-picked, the lemons that we saw being handpicked, you know, earlier, now taking it to the pack house. And of course, what I mentioned earlier is we're going to see then the unveiling of a plug at the pack house once the produce arrives through this tractor that we're seeing the President driving. Now,
you don't need a license for a tractor to drive a tractor, do you? You don't?
To drive a tractor?
No.
Perhaps it's also a distance thing if it's literally just a few meters away. But Rampela,
there we go. Hey, it's moving.
This came up earlier, you know, and you just touched on it, the fact that with this particular project in particular, we're seeing government facilitating supply of water, right? Yeah, yeah. Now, perhaps I'm also, you know, a layman in this particular area, and I really am wondering whether water supply could ever be a challenge for the country, considering a project of this magnitude. Yeah. Looking at the fact that, you know, even as we speak, we're in drought, and, you know, with us having, you know, inconsistent rainfall, even with irrigation systems, my assumption is water has to be harvested first. Yeah. And the struggle in our country may be the actual harvest of the water. So what are your thoughts on that, and how do we mitigate a risk such as that, if at all it is a risk?
It's a huge risk. I mean, of course, we know for years we've been to a semi-arid climate, country. So, and you mentioned a very key point, water harvesting. In my conversations, actually, just last week, I had this with agronomists, trying to understand. It was like I was anticipating I was going to have this interview, and I got a lot of lessons from that. Given the few rains that we have had, with a good strategy on water management, specifically focusing on harvesting, we still have an honest chance to do well in this area. Because what we are having right now is that most of farmers depend a lot on underground water. So there's a lot of investment that goes on water drilling. But even then, it will surprise you that most areas have really low yields. You know, that cannot support horticulture. Horticulture is really water intensive. It needs it consumes a lot of water because of the nature of products that we are dealing with. But I know, and I've been sort of informed that the country is working on this water management strategies, and it's something that is being considered. But I think what I like about it now is that there's almost an intention to sort of get the farmer into this conversation, because it used to be just the conversation in government in terms of the water department that's responsible for that. Yeah, so now we're seeing farmers getting interested in this. Because, I mean, especially with this current climate, we've seen many people have lost crops, like in the last 3-4 weeks. You know, some have tried planting stuff like green pepper. Some have already done 3 cycles trying to plant, and then the sun just bends it off. And, yeah, but
I can attest to that.
Yeah. So it's a huge risk, like you said, a huge one. But of course, we have technology that exists to mitigate those. And with the will and with the intention, I think, as Reggie was saying earlier, we have an honest chance. Because the technology exists, we just have to adopt it and maybe customize it for our needs.
From a standards perspective, you know, I think perhaps let's have that conversation. What do we need in place now to ensure compliance with international standards to maintain, you know, this and to be able to expand, you know, the export market that we're you know, looking to be able to you know, capture, so for lack of a better word.
First I must admit that I'm not an expert in that, but I would use my understanding of the global trade to sort of answer that. Of course, in every trade, in every product, there are standards that have to be met, you know, from diamonds to oranges. So in most cases, especially with food, then there's grading, you know, so there are standards that are followed in terms of how these products are graded. But I think connecting to the value chain that we were talking about earlier, so we're going to see some aspects of that coming up. So where people set up business specifically for grading of these products. But of course we have BOPs. The question is how well equipped are they in terms of leading these farmers and the industry in terms of meeting the standards. But we have a whole unit that is dedicated to such issues in the country, which is a plus for us. But in terms of the specific industry, maybe we need to equip and maybe train a few people, a few experts to help us with that. But the fact that we are already exporting to these markets means that we are meeting some of the basic standards that they've, for sure, the phytosanitary standards, we are meeting them. But in terms of, because the product grade, and I think this is really key, the product grade determines how much you can sell it for. So it also comes to profitability issues. So how much you can realize from the international market is influenced also by the product grading.
When we look at this project, what is it that the government can do, or Botswana can do, which can be considered the next big thing, and in what industry, if we are still continuing with that narrative of becoming an export-led economy by 2036?
I think that's a difficult one, actually, because I mean, that question, well, on the surface of it, it looks very easy, but it's very complex. Because building an industry is really, it takes a long time, and but it also, as like I was saying earlier, you need an ecosystem built to nurture a given industry. So I am of the view that whatever opportunity, whatever industry we want to develop, we have then to rely on experts to guide us. So, I mean, for example, for years we've been trying the leather industry and we've not been winning on that. Why? Because we don't have a proper ecosystem built for that industry. You see, we should have had, I mean, this is a huge opportunity, by the way. Like I said, every Mozana almost has one or two cows, you know. And for many years, you know, we have tried, but we're still not winning on that regard. So I think where we are now is really at potential stage.
Right.
In every industry we are at potential stage. But also I think we have to be a bit forgiving in that regard, because we have a very brief history of industrialization. We almost have no history of industrialization, by the way. So that means everyone who is doing it for the first time.
Absolutely.
So, but can we be consistent, remain in the game, build capacity that is needed? That's really a big question. And then build structures that will support any. So if we are to build any industry, we have to build the ecosystem for it.
Okay, we understand that we have to fly over to Selebi-Phikwe, where everything is actually happening. We understand the president has delivered the harvest, but let's get the latest from our reporter there, Kev. Quite an eventful morning.
Indeed, it is true. Good morning.
I was saying quite an eventful morning that side.
Yes, quite an eventful morning, Reginald. The historic moment happened this morning. President Dr. MOKGWEETSI did the initial harvest here at the Selebi-Phikwe citrus project. You will know that the citrus global market is quite interesting. The leading exporter of citrus fruits is Brazil, and in Africa, I think one of the leading exporters of citrus is Egypt and South Africa as well. So what President MASISI did launch here this morning is Botswana as a player in this global market.
Quite interesting, something that I was actually thinking about earlier as the harvest was ongoing, Kifilwe, is, it's a pity. I wish, they were harvesting nachis or oranges, because as they go, they would actually be peeling and tasting. What was the harvesting, experience like from your observation as it was ongoing?
I think quite emotional, for lack of a better word, because I was here 4 years ago when President MASISI planted one of the first trees. And when I came here 4 years later, yesterday, I couldn't even locate where he planted that seedling. So, quite emotional. Like I did say yesterday, the field is pregnant with fruits. The fruit trees have grown, and you can't really see any bare land. This place is 880 hectares planted. So when you look at the plants, they build right up to infinity, so you'll not be able to see anything except the fruit trees. And like it was explained in the morning, indeed the president harvested the lemons, and throughout the year there will be an opportunity to harvest the different citruses, because these are seasonal fruits. You will know that in about 3 months, I think the oranges will be ready. There's grapefruits, there's nachos. So yeah, there'll be a hive of activity throughout the year here, and we will see a lot of trucks leaving this place, some for the local market and some for the international market.
And still on the harvest, something that I observed is it almost seems like there is a particular technique to harvesting. We actually, in a very large moment, we saw the president touching on that and talking to Minister of Minerals and Energy, talking about the technique. So what were your observations as far as technique is concerned? He spoke about not versus using something to actually cut. So perhaps just get us into that from what you observed, during the harvest, where technique is concerned.
I think in general, this place is for very skilled people, highly technical. So everything is done, according to order. There's order. Modimo tse leng gore ha o ka dira sengwe se se phapang ha wa khotlela tikologo kana wa dira sengwe ga nna malwetse re ka se re khone re sa tlhole re khona go nna le access to that international market. So everything is orderly, everything is done to precision. There's no, what we do in our ordinary farms and fields in the villages.
And something, of course, that is happening right now in our country is we have the Bahamas Prime Minister, Mr. Philip Davis, here. We understand he's also going to be coming through to tour the plant tomorrow.
Yes, he will come through. I think the president will also have the opportunity to take him around. It is just a way of showcasing a product, quite interesting, a product that is in its infancy stage here in this country, and also introduce Botswana to Bahamas as a supplier of this commodity. So I think that's what he will do. He will also have the opportunity to showcase our baby steps towards industrialization, because when you get to the pack house, you will see that there is quite a level of technical stuff that are there. So this is just baby steps towards Botswana getting into that space where industries produce stuff for the export market. So I think basically what he will come and do here is really to showcase Botswana and also the right opportunity to sell this product to Bahamas.
Kev, you're telling us about the pack house. We saw the president transporting that harvest, but he is going to be in a short while commissioning the pack house. What can you tell us about the pack house, but also what can you tell us about the activities of the day, because it looks like it's a packed program?
A very long program. I actually have to leave in a few because I have to get to the next stage of the program where, we will see the next stage from harvesting. They will go through a process where they clean up and package the product, and we will see that entire process and get to the point where the president will put the finished product into the trucks and, do a sort of a ceremonial send-off into the market. There will be a truck there. So indeed, a packed morning. This program is expected to go right up to lunchtime where, speeches will also be made at that platform when we get to the farmhouse. So Reginald and Khanu, please let me go. I have to catch up the next phase of the program.
We'll have to let you go then, Cap. But we'll keep you, in touch with you to find out what else is developing on that side. We seem to be running out of time and heading towards Botswana Connect. But do remember that we've been talking to Rempela about the business side of this project in Selebi-Phikwe.
Okay, it turns out that your audio isn't quite clear, but yeah, you were just mentioning that we've been with Mr. Thuso Mpela, really just exploring the business dimensions or opportunities that could result from the Botswana Citrus project, especially considering the monumental activity that we're seeing today, that we just of course just observed. But as we wrap up, going forward, and I think it'll take us back to us, like how we started. Yeah. But going forward, what are your recommendations now, from today onwards, as far as the citrus industry is concerned?
Yeah, well, I'll offer my view on that. Yeah, but it's from business trade facilitation and things. But I think where we started and what we have achieved so far is really commendable. And I think going forward, we should never lose this. I mean, it's momentous, it's historical. We should never lose this. I mean, it's a proud moment for the country, because this is what will keep us going. Yeah, but challenges are ahead. Yeah. And I think if we were to prioritize issues, I would say we have met the phytosanitary requirements for this international market. That for me is top priority. Because if anything happens there, we're almost back to square one. And I think what I'm saying is I would really like to see the country investing a lot in protection of borders and stuff like that. Because once that is done, if we can secure our borders in that regard, then we can focus on how well we can produce here. Number two, we're still working. I think we haven't really gotten a green light with the American market, and because I hear we have Europe already. We have I think the Middle East, and America should be coming soon. Yeah, but I think the latest information that I had is that we haven't secured the American certification. But I think there are two things. One, of course, is the AGOA agreement that will really channel us into the American market. Number two, Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. Of course, there's still challenges in terms of actualizing it. But I don't know if you know that Egypt is actually among the top 10 importers of citrus products, just across here. Yeah. So we have a lot of options. But the question really is how well we structure this industry, from equipping the farmer, ensuring that we structure capital to meet the needs of the industry. Yeah, I think those, in terms of the top three, I would say that keep the borders safe, keep getting this agreements, clearing the way for the product, and then of course structure finance. If we can deal with that, other issues really like skills development and stuff will be a byproduct of these three.
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thuso Mpela, just exploring the business angle of this big farm, the Selebi-Phikwe citrus farm. that was commissioning its harvest today. Rempela, unfortunately, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for having had the patience to stay with us for quite some time in the studio. Thank you so much, and
Yeah, thank you.
Right. So, and yeah, of course, with that, we come to the end of the day break this morning. Coming up will be Botswana Connect, and this program continues, and we'll be giving you now the official part of the program. Of course, what has happened in the morning was the harvest and the transportation of the harvest to the pack house. yeah, like the official, well, officiating, let me put it that way, where we're going to see speeches happening, so you can look out for that in Botswana Connects. But meet us tomorrow, same time, same place on the Daybreak. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Bye-bye.
MASISI a tsena mo pusong ka ngwaga 2018 o ile a bua jalo ka seminari ke tile I'm going to lead an export-led economy. Yes, ke a go tsamaisa puso e leng gore ke tabe ke kgona gore ke kapakabanye ka go tsaya dithoto ke di isa ko mahatsheng a sele ke lebeletse gore nna palo ya megongwe ya batho e nyenyane le mmaraka me o monyenyane. mme re leta MASISI a tsena mo pusong jaaka ke setse ke tlhalositse a tsa ka dilo tse di harologaneng a